If you're watching this, then you're probably going through a dark night of the soul, you've gone through one, or you're on the cusp of it, or maybe you're just interested if this, what you're experiencing right now, is a typical dark night of the soul. I've seen a lot of people online talk about this, specifically on TikTok, throughout the last half year or so. And I'm really grateful that this has become a topic because back then when I went through it in 2014, I didn't have access to all of the information that we have now. It felt like a very isolated experience, and I really couldn't look at how other people experienced it or what they learned through it. And so I'm grateful that I can just share my experience and help you if you're going through something like this, and really turn your pain into purpose, because that's what it was for me. I started this channel after it, and there's this really incredible thing I picked up from personality hackers when they're talking about INFJs and INFJs loving themselves, which is you get to a place where you're going to die trying to protect your peace. And that's how it was for me. I really had to shed everything that kept me from prioritizing my peace. And it really means like inner peace in a sense of I still get into conflict. I still, have confrontations with people, but there's a part of me that I always say is not up for debate. And everything else just fell off. There were just parts of me that I needed to shed, and it happened so rapidly and so quickly that I cannot get those parts back. Even if I wanted to, I just don't have access to them anymore because it's not who I am. And I want to make it very clear, this is not about going through a very depressed state in your life. Actually, my most depressed state was before I went through my dark night of the soul. I believe for a lot of people, it is actually the thing that they're most afraid of. I was definitely most afraid of that. And it felt like failure. It felt like I'm giving up. And so I do believe that a lot of people are in this state where they're trying everything to keep their head above water, besides like confronting that part of themselves to go through that sort of ego death. I'm not going to get into the semantics here, because if it's an ego death or not, are you losing your ego or not? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a specialist in the formalities of it, but just I know that there's an image that I had of myself, a way of how I saw myself, how I saw other people, how I saw the world, that just crumbled before me. And to this day, I can tell you it was in 2014. I don't believe, it's the things I'm experiencing now. It was one incident. It was a very precise moment of time. And I want to share with you what happened, how I turned my pain into purpose, so it can inspire you and maybe help you through whatever you're going through. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to work with me one-on-one, now is the perfect time. The new year starts, so give yourself the best Christmas gift you can give yourself, which is to work on yourself and to tap into those areas of yourself that you always wanted to tap into and create the epic life you always wanted. So all the information you can find in the link in the description. We also have a lot of free material and the courses, so there's something there for everybody. If you have any other questions, write us at info@wences.com. So what exactly is the dark night of the soul? It is a process of awakening. It's a process of shedding everything that you're not. So as I said, it's not about being depressed. I've seen people who have been depressed for decades who've never gone through it. And then I've seen people who have never experienced any, really sad moments in their lives, like on a regular basis, because they avoid them. Like, I'm somebody like this, like I've had tragedies, but I very often avoided negative emotions, and with that also positive emotions, in order not to like really dwell in negativity, which, really caused me to be numb to a lot of things. So for the longest time, I didn't cry. I didn't get really happy about certain things. So these are like two separate things. I've never really seen people who actively choose to go through it, because it is something that we psychologically will want to avoid. And I also don't think it's a necessary component. I do believe that if you, for example, grow up really healthy, if you don't have any issues with authority figures in your life or with caregivers, and, you grow up in a very harmonious environment, you may not have to go there. You may also not want to go there. Not everybody wants to go through an awakening, or is aiming for that, or, knows that there's something that, you just have to find. But most of you who are watching this are like me when it comes to this. And this was something I was not going to let go of, because whoever you meet in your life, any circumstance you have in your life, is pretty much guiding you towards that, no matter at what time. And thankfully, we live in a society where this isn't something that is shamed. We can openly talk about it and really go through it together, because it is an incredible opportunity. And I would have never had the happiness that I have now, the fulfillment, the success, and just, an overall feeling of I'm living my life. Like I always say, before that, it really felt like life is happening outside of me. And through that moment, life started happening through me. And I never thought it was possible. And I'm here to tell you, yes, it is possible. So let me tell you what led me to that situation. So for me, it was that in teenage years, I kind of figured out that I can be an image, I can build myself up, and I can look a certain way in the way I talk to everybody, in the way I present myself to certain people, that would get me really far in order to, be liked by them. And so I was really, really good at this. This was a skill that I had learned, and it got me, in some kind of popularity if I wanted to. I just didn't care enough very often, which was actually something that made me quite sad, because let's say I went to college and there were groups of, people, and they were just meeting each other, and it's like new friends and all of that. I didn't like anybody. I really felt like, okay, I would just, go there, and then it wasn't what I was looking for, not understanding that I could create actually what I was looking for. And so it was always this thing of, yeah, I have the skills, but what for? Like, why would I want those people to like me if I don't like them? And it wasn't their fault at all, because I expected from absolutely everybody in my life to fulfill me in a way that they never could, because the only thing that can really fulfill me is me. And it really got to a point where I had those typical INFJ relationships, very few, very intense, platonic, romantic. They were all based on, I'm going to save that person. I'm going to be a martyr. I see that they're going through a lot of pain. I see that they're not happy with themselves. And I felt like I can see them and I can see their pain, and I'm just going to take it away from them, which of course led to me having very isolated relationships that I couldn't combine, because I was one version of myself when I was with friend A, I was another version of myself when I was with friend B, and so on. Because the moment all of them would see, all of me, not that you can really do that, but I wouldn't hide those aspects of me that I thought they wouldn't like, they wouldn't open up to me so much. And why did I do this? Well, at the end, it's like you feel you have to prove to everybody around you that you're worth it. And, we all have something that we feel unworthy of, or that we want, to get some kind of recognition of subconsciously, even if not consciously. And for me, it was, I am a good person. I have good intentions. I'm not inherently selfish. And, I felt like if I was seeing somebody else's pain and I wasn't fixing that, then that in itself made me a bad person, which on the one hand is a God complex in itself. Like, who am I to think that I can fix somebody else? Like, at that moment, I didn't really recognize this, but it's a self-defense mechanism, because what we actually want is, if we choose ourselves first and we are not neglecting ourselves, we're saying, I'm making sure that I'm good and my cup of energy is overflowing. And then we want people to like us, right? Because then it's like people like you for who you are. People like you for you choosing you, and not for you abandoning who you are in order to make another person feel good. And secondly, and what I recognized, later on, is you can tell people, oh, you're so great. And, I see you, and like, I'm giving you all my attention, and I'm becoming the supporting role in your movie in order to make you feel good, because it feels like this is my purpose. People don't recognize that. They don't recognize it because of several reasons. First off, if a person is in a lot of pain, they cannot feel your pain. They cannot see your sacrifice. They can't even acknowledge their own feelings. And so they can't acknowledge yours either. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that no matter how much you tell a person, believe in yourself, you're worth it, what you're showing them as an example is you're not worth it, because I'm not valuing myself. I'm hollowing myself out. And so I was really pushing myself to save a person and make them feel that they're worthy. And we were so different in so many aspects that I really neglected who I was. And it was so harsh on me. I really felt like I needed this. Like it felt like air. And I think in a lot of ways, it just reminded me that was some kind of energy that I was looking for, that just mirrored back to me something that I was missing. And I was missing that because of what I didn't get in childhood, the kind of acceptance that I was looking for. And when you go through this dark night of the soul, it was really getting to a place where you know nobody will ever give you this. What I was looking for the most, I'm never going to get it. And so it felt like failure in a lot of ways. It felt like I would give up, any chance of happiness. But I also recognize nobody can give me this, right? It would have been great if I would have gotten that as a kid, but it's not somebody's fault in a sense, because I wasn't, in a traumatic childhood, as in I wasn't beaten as a kid, and I didn't, have something where you would have ever called social services for. I've never experienced anything like this, but I am different than most people, and so I have special needs, and your environment isn't always able to fulfill that. Thankfully, we talk more and more about this, but the fact of the matter is that's what it was. And I was looking for, just a cause or a person to reflect back to me, you're worth it. And, you always end up in situations where the person is going to mirror to you that you're not worth it. Because if you already knew you were worth it, you wouldn't, neglect yourself so much in order to save another person. You would know that your inner peace and that core of yours is never up for debate. But that was the one time where I went overboard and I really lost my sense of reality. How it happened then, I don't think it's ever happened to me before. And I didn't really lose it because I really at that point knew I need to change something. That's not going to continue, because I was looking already ahead and recognized that person isn't going to change. So I need to be the one who really steps away from the situation, meaning I have to reveal who I really am. And that included a lot of anger, that included showing parts of me that are selfish, that aren't all about I'm doing what is best for you, but also things that might hurt another person. And it really felt like in that moment, I'm giving up any chance of being accepted in society. It really felt like I was back in school, and it was that situation where you're a young kid and you want to belong, and the cool kids are telling you, you don't belong here. Who are you? You're weird, dork, you're eccentric, you're just a freak. Get away. You're not good enough to play with us. That's the kind of feeling I had. And I'm not saying that's how it has to be for you. That's how it was for me. And that's how I felt at that time. And I was 26. So I was already an adult woman. This is not something that happened when I was a teenager, but it really catapulted me back to that situation, because from that moment on, when I was a teenager and I first experienced those things, which is not true, I experienced them from early childhood on, but when I became a teen, I sort of learned how to use my skills in order to fit in and to pretend I'm this version of myself that is just a blank slate, and that people could project onto whatever they wanted. And so at first sight, they always liked me, or a lot of people liked me, until, I actually wanted real connection. And so when I recognized that no matter what I do, and I had really given it my all, I have really tried my absolute best to help another person see their worth, to appreciate themselves, and all they did was keep on pushing me down and dismissing me and making me feel bad. And up until this day, I'm super grateful for that person. I'm super grateful for that situation because I shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place. I also know that, that was somebody in a lot of pain, and this is not pain that I could have fixed. And at the same time, it just showed me my limit. Nobody else had shown me my limit like that. And so I was able to sort of like say, okay, I need to choose me. And that's when the dark night of the soul started for me. I've talked about this before, but for me, it felt like I was in Gotham City. I don't know how many of you have been in Amsterdam in the wintertime, but for me, Amsterdam in the wintertime, same thing as Gotham City. And like, that's no diss to Amsterdam. I love Amsterdam in the summer. The flowers, the bicycles, like it's magical. But wintertime, it reminds me of Gotham City. And that's how I felt. Like I felt I was in this dark place and I really felt I was never going to get out. It was very, very isolating because in order for me to be able to heal, I needed to cut everybody out. I needed to detach myself because I needed to find peace. And the only way I could find peace at that time is if I was completely alone. Because every single person in my life that I had any kind of interaction with, I played a role. And so once I was able to really stay in that, I had to face so many questions, one of which was like, what are you going to do now? Because it really felt like my life is completely meaningless. And in the grand scheme of things, it felt this like it is that way in the sense of, I'm just one person of billions of people, and there were, billions of people before me, billions of people like after me. Like, what does it matter what I do with my life and who I am? But I also knew I was not going to do anything stupid, if you know what I mean. Like, I knew I was going to continue. And so I felt like, what am I going to do? Well, I can either like live the truth, which is my life is completely meaningless and I can just lay on the couch and just let life pass by, or I can tell myself a lie, which is my life matters and I'm just going to make the best out of it, not maybe in a big scale of things, but in a small sense. And the other, like in a way of I can help the people around me and I can help myself and be an example. And like if I can help one person, then that would already be an improvement. And at the same time, I, for me, found this philosophy of I'm like part of life altogether. I'm part of it all. And so maybe I personally don't matter, but if I'm part of it all, then yes, I matter because we're all like connected and it's all one. And that helped me a lot. And so in the beginning, I really felt that looking at life this way was a complete lie, until I recognized that you can, tell yourself either story. Both make sense to some extent, but it's just the one isn't going to give you any kind of joy. It's not going to improve anything, and the other one is. And so I decided to lean into something that felt like a lie to me at that moment because I was so low. And I really fought myself out of that place. So it was, every day was a little bit better because all I said was, I'm going to be in Gotham City my whole life. That's how it felt. I'm always going to be alone. There's not going to be any joy, but I'm going to make it a little bit better tomorrow than it was today. And, a lot of people say like, do meditation, do journaling, work on, decluttering your life. And like, I know how important that is. And if you've been through boot camp or if you look into boot camp, what we do, we work on a lot of those things. Like you can really improve your mood just by simple things like sleeping, meditating, journaling, having a vision. For me, music was the thing that really, really saved me. It was something that I continuously bombarded my mind with, and I really had to go into fight mode. Like it really didn't help me to listen to some like happy-go-lucky songs because I was so low. It would have just been like not something that really resonates with me. It wouldn't have been something that I would have believed. But I was at a place where I knew, okay, I now have to choose myself, meaning I have to live out my truth. And this is going to look very weird to all people. I knew that every single person, maybe that was romantically interested in, or people from my work, or anybody who really looked into the channel, for example, would have thought, that's a crazy person. Like, I thought she was cool. No, she's completely out of her mind. That's how it felt like to me. Like, I really felt like me talking about things that matter to me and leaning into the things that are dear to my heart were so unacceptable. That's how much I didn't like myself. And so, but I understood that's who I am. And I also understood that even and for like at the moment when, it all happened, when I had to choose myself, I really felt like I was a bad person. I really felt like I was too cold. I was too detached. I didn't deserve anybody to protect me. I didn't deserve, or people didn't believe that I deserved decent human, like dignity in a way, because I allowed things to happen, like just mentally, I just allowed myself to feel bad, or I allowed another person to make me feel this bad because I gave that power away. I thought, like, if I did so much for you, at least you're going to have some compassion for me, like just not kick me when I'm down. And that person couldn't do that. And so that was like the thing that told me, okay, like I can take it, but I know I can take more pain than most people. Like, you can't do this. And so that's when I started fighting back, because it was a universal truth that I fought for. It was my beliefs of what is acceptable in general and what was not acceptable. And I knew that's not something I can stand for. And so I had this sense of there's, something wrong with me, but still, I'm still a human being and I am on this earth, and the way I see the world is just as valuable as anybody else's. And I'm not going to keep quiet, and I'm not going to keep it hidden because it makes anybody uncomfortable. And it really, up till today, it is really something that I feel I'm going to die trying, like in a way of I can't give this up. This is just such a feeling of ownership and of freedom and of peace, that it's not going to be something that is ever up for debate. And so that's when I recognized, okay, I have to give my life meaning in like what I do, as in my purpose isn't going to be another person. It's also not going to be something like, oh, I want love. It's also not going to be something like with things I achieve. I never believed that to begin with, but I needed something that I could, hold on to, as in, I want to be an example of something. I want to contribute to something that is bigger than me. And I've seen so many examples when like this worked. And so that was the thing that saved me. And what I can really recommend for you to think about when you get in those situations, ask yourself, what kind of situations really pushed you over the edge? Because if we're willing to get pushed over the edge, then this is a great indicator for something we just need to do, because it is who we are in essence. And so for me, it was, I wanted that person to accept themselves and to see themselves the way I saw them. I just made the mistake of doing this at my own expense. And so I recognized I have to find a way where I can still do that. I can still inspire people to tap into that while protecting and maintaining my, not only integrity, but the image I had of myself, which is of somebody who's strong, somebody who's, exciting, somebody who wants to have fun and who's not giving up on themselves. And so that's why when we, are in boot camp and we talk about purpose, we first go through the layer of how do you want to be seen? Because if that aspect is not solid, you're going to do things out of, there's always going to be some feeling of, I need to get something back, right? We all want to be appreciated for what we do, but it's one thing if we do this as like a nice add-on. It is a different thing if we're only doing it in order to get that validation. And it really changed something for me in the sense of I am going to feel good about myself because I give, and because I give in a healthy way. And if I'm able to help one person, I've already won, right? And I knew that I could help at least one person because I have already helped me. Like, it worked for me. I knew that my new way of thinking was better than the old one. And so I knew, like, this already works. Now it's just a question of, if I show this to others, how can people find me so it can help them? It's not going to help everybody. And throughout the last year, it was like, in the beginning, not a lot of people who could identify with it. Now it's a completely new timeline. People are super open to things like this, thankfully. And so it is a lot easier, and you see how people are catching up to this. And before I knew it, I was not alone anymore, because up until this point, it was like, how can I really detach myself from my life and like attach myself to somebody else's life and energy, and then I would feel excitement. But now I was generating my own excitement. I was generating my own drive, my own ambition. And it was ambition for something that was really intrinsically me. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to climb the corporate ladder, or I'm going to like find an amazing love story. No, it was, I'm going to give, and I'm going to give in a very unique way, as in my way. I'm going to share my reality with the world and let that inspire others. And the only way I could do this was by giving an energy that was as peaceful as possible, right? And that's why I said I didn't really allow anybody into my life that didn't accept me for who I was. And for some people, this doesn't sound like a big thing, because some people, they can naturally show up the way they are, and they never have to worry about not being accepted, because the way they are is just accepted by society. I'm not that way. And a lot of the people who watch my videos or listen to this, as a podcast, feel the same way. And so it feels like if I choose myself, that means I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And that's how it felt for me as well. And the way I was able to connect with people was that I was adding something to others. It was like, yeah, we're alone, but I'm not looking in a way of like poor me, but I'm looking at, look, I can help so many people. Because no matter where you're at in life, there are always people who wish they would have your clarity, who would wish to have your inspiration in life, who would wish to have your energy, right? And so there are always people that you can pull up in one way or another. And once we get to this place and know that I have to be good for myself as much as possible so I can actually, commit to a bigger purpose, we have won. Like it's done. There's nothing that can really get you off course, because inevitably there's going to be tragedy in our life. But this is about, a path in life. This is about knowing that you're not regretting who you're becoming. And, sometimes it's failure. But once you go through this dark night of the soul, it really shows you who you are. And I was so afraid the moment I, started fighting back against that person that really pushed me so far. But I also understood that, you actually just mirror to people your essential truth. And through that, they recognize very often, if they are willing to look at you, because not a lot of people will, but people, like, sometimes they take like years to like look at who you are, but they can't really look away because they know it just mirrors a truth back to them. Some people are not ready for it at all. Some people are ready for it right away. They recognize that you are mirroring like your truth back to them, and this will just force them to see all the parts that they have taken on that aren't them, and all the things that they have denied in themselves, which are actually them. Because the part of us that is really us, like, it can't be taken away from us. I really believe that. And so I really lost a lot of fear around hurting people by me showing up as authentically as I am, because people, if they're not ready, they're just not going to look your way. And people who are ready, they can take it. Like, it is a transformative experience. And I've had people in my life who've been depressed for many years, and it's not like that is worse or better than the dark night of the soul. I would, say that's a life with a lot more pain, because the dark night of the soul, it doesn't have to be like a long period of time. Depression in so many ways, I think, is happening because we're not going through the dark night of the soul, because we're not tapping into who we really are, and we're like not pushed enough to embrace that, like really go into it. And this should not in any kind of way come from a place of you're just not strong enough for the dark night of the soul, that's why you're depressed. Like, I know they're just neurological reasons for people to be depressed. I also know that this is not a choice. There are traumatic events that are just so hard to access that you can't heal them right away. I'm not a clinical psychologist in any kind of way. So please, like, if you're in a situation like this, don't take it from a place of, oh, you're not good enough to do this. I'm talking about people who can handle it, like who are not traumatized to such an extent, or who don't have the neurological challenges because something isn't happening the way it should. I'm talking about general, like, people who go through this where you feel like, I can handle this is happening to me, and what I'm saying is, this is my experience, and if this is something that can help you through your experience and you pick up what resonates with you, I'm glad I can share it. But I'm sending a lot of love and empathy and compassion for everybody who feels like they can't tap into that and they feel like they're stuck in a place. And if you're somebody like this, share it in the comments. Maybe I can give you some more things that I've gone through. That being said, what I've experienced and who I am isn't the solution for everybody. Like, there are so many people who come up to me in a way of, oh, thank you, you've helped me so much. And like, why should I say something when you're already saying what you're saying? In a way of, why should I share with other people my experience when I can just show them your videos, for example? But there's people who you are going to be able to influence and touch who I could never reach. Not because they're not watching my videos, but just because they are in some kind of way too different to me. Their experience are different than mine. But the way you experience life is something that can help another person. And it is always worth to do that while making sure that you are at your best. So I just honestly believe we all have something to contribute. And that's what's going to make our world better if we really tap into this. And I know it's not easy. I know I'm definitely not an expert on it. This is going to be a lifelong journey of mine. But this dark night of the soul period, and I couldn't even tell you how long it lasted, because it was a gradual process from it was dark to, oh, I'm just in a place where it's actually sunshine every day. Yeah, things happen and I get sad, but it was different. Like, the cloud that was on top of me was not there anymore. I was like above the clouds. And I still am. So I couldn't tell you when it was like really over, but it was something that altogether was, I don't know, it probably wasn't even a year. Like, the really hardest part, maybe a year. Let's say a year. And in that time, I was really in fight mode. I was listening to a lot of music that got me just into warrior, fight. Like, I have to dig myself out of a deep, deep hole. And I'm glad I did it. And I had to do it by myself. And I don't believe that anybody can really help you with this, despite like what kind of information you put into your system. So if my video resonates with you, like, I'm glad it does. If other videos resonate with you, amazing. I listened to a lot of motivational videos at that time. There were like sports motivation videos. That was a big thing back then. So whatever helps you, take that in. And like, sometimes you don't know what people are going through, because this part of my life, I can tell you, nobody was aware. This is not like last month when I said, oh, in November, everybody around me was really worried and I had to recalibrate and I took on too much and I like reached my limits. That was just like how much I was taking on. The dark night of the soul period, it didn't look like anything from the outside. I was still going to work. I wrote the ebook at that time. I started my channel. I actually switched jobs to a much higher paying job. So you couldn't really tell what was going on within me, and the grief and the pain and the sadness that came with it. This feeling of just having lost everything. But, some things you just can't lose. And that's what that period really brings out. So if you're going through this, if you're on the cusp of going through it, if you've gone through it, I wish you all the strength, and hopefully this video helped you. Remember, if you want some more help of mine, then check out everything on one-on-one coaching or the audio guide. We also have a lot of free material. Everything you need, you can find in links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in line with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.